Hey Overlord, it's me again, Dreg. In this transmission, I decided to make some tabletop terrain pieces. This build, like all great stories, starts with a piece of modern art and some empty containers. This is the first build I have done that I had an end goal in mind. I have done a little bit of research and I knew what I kind of wanted to build, and I had some old containers laying around, so yeah. Step one of my build is to use my Dremel and take the funnel end off of these bottles. When I do a build, I don't like buying new things to take apart. I like going to thrift stores or old junk, like this spray bottle. My wife didn't want me to use it anymore. She said it was full of like mold or something, so I took it apart. As I was taking apart this spray bottle, I realized they had these detachable plastic hair tie ring things. I took them off. I'm going to use them in a later build. The next step was to fill these containers with Expandifoam, Cheese Whiz style. I got this idea from Eric's Hobby Workshop. It's a great channel. I get tons of inspiration and knowledge from him. I will put a link in the description below. Something very satisfying about watching this Expandifoam spray in slow-mo. You're welcome. I think I used too much Expandifoam because in the end I got 5 containers with muffin tops. While the foam was curing, I used 5 different techniques to make these plastic bottles look more industrial. I used this technique on a previous build and I had some left over. I found that if I used plastic clippers on these, they would shatter into really cool random shapes. I decided to use it again. I also used this technique on my previous build. I found that these foam circles, if ripped or just clipped, cut, whatever, hold really cool impressions and shapes, and that you can use it to fill in gaps or whatnot. So that's what I did with this. I was drinking coffee out of a really hot coffee cup, and it had these little sleeves. And I looked on the inside of the sleeve, and it had this cool corrugated look, so I saved a few of them and used them in my build. I don't know where I got these tags from, but when I run out, I think I'm going to cry. I have literally used them on every build so far. I clip off the little triangular piece. They're really flexible, and you can glue them side by side to make it look like panels or, something that's holding something together. I really like them. Every once in a while, I will intentionally leave a gap between them or not put them completely parallel to each other. Give them more of a ramshackle look. Some of my bottles have seams on them. I covered this seam up with super glue and baking soda. It makes kind of like a weld. I got this idea from Bill Making Stuff. I really like his channel. It's funny and I get tons of inspiration and good content from him. I will put a link to his channel in the description below. I use these 5 techniques on my other containers in different amounts, different places, different shapes to add variety. After the Expandifoam had finished curing, it was time to remove the muffin tops. I don't know what it was, but I love the way these muffin tops look. They were very random and organic looking. It almost looked like they grew. I saved them. I plan on using them in a future build. To make a bottom for my pieces, I rescued an old macaroni and cheese box from the trash, ripped it open along its seams, and I used the bottle as a template and traced it out, and then used a pair of little girl child scissors to cut them out. I then used some hot glue to glue them in place, but my first attempt didn't stick, so I put tons on the second one. It seemed to work fine the second time. One of the containers had this huge expandifoam void, so I just crumpled up and shoved trash in there, pumped in tons of hot glue, more trash, hot glue, trash, and then eventually I put the base on. It worked really well. Some of my containers had an unnecessary divot, so I cut out cardboard circles when check it for fit, trim it down, check it for fit. Then I took plastic lid off of water bottles, used tons of hot glue, pressed it in place, and then super glued the cardboard circle in place. In complete sacrifice for my craft, I pushed the cardboard into the super glue with my bare fingertips, gluing them in place along with the cardboard. In doing so, I left a crease in the cardboard. I tried for a while to get that crease out, but then in the end I decided it looked ramshackle, and so I left it. This technique of making the tops of my containers flat worked well enough. I decided to do it on the other ones as well. In doing research for my build, I discovered that most tabletop wargaming is at a scale of 28 millimeters, and this build is perfectly scaled for that. I wanted the characters to be able to gain access to the top of my build, so I set about constructing ladders. I don't know if my ladders are perfectly scaled to 28 millimeter figurines or not, but when using shish kebab skewers and toothpicks, you get what you get. If I would have planned this out better, I would have made the ladders separately, glued the rungs to the back side instead of to the front, or maybe put the rungs in between the two sides. But in the end, I kind of liked the way it looked. It looked industrial, like it was made out of scraps. My vision for this build was not to be made out of wood. The whole thing was going to be made out of metal, so when I super glued the wood in place, I sprinkled it with baking soda to give it that weld look. The tops of the orange container gave me a little bit of issue because they were curved and not flat. In the end, I just decided to make a platform above that curved piece. Fun fact, when cutting shish kebab skewers with plastic snips, They shoot off like darts. For the floor of the platform, I used more of that corrugated hot coffee holder stuff. I just eyeballed it. I never measure. And then I cut it. One of the legs was in the way, so I cut a notch out of the cardboard. It made it look very unprofessionally built. Then I superglued it in place. After it was on there, I went about making a ladder. After building the ladder for safety reasons, I decided to add a guardrail. What if in the future the ruling body, the ruling governmental entity is OSHA? We got to make sure all of our T's are crossed and all of our I's are dotted as far as safety is concerned. After I finished the first orange juice concentrate platform, I liked the look of it, so I set about making a second one. I was careful to include guardrails on this one as well. In previous builds, I had difficulty adding rivets. I ended up using a sharpened crayon. This time I invested a couple bucks, bought this little tray, this little stylus that uses a dollop of wax. I wanted to see if it worked good or not. It worked decently well. I wasn't super impressed with it. Actually, the crayon worked a lot better. The thing that I was impressed with was the little tray. You pour a few rhinestones on there, give it a little shake, and it orients them in the correct way. Saved me a ton of time and headache. After I added the rhinestones, I decided it was a good idea to pose my containers in various positions like a 90s boy band. After priming, I did a few experiments. The first experiment was making a rusty, crusty texture using baking soda and paint. I saw this on Bill's channel, Bill Making Stuff. I think I said earlier, I will put a link in the description below. I mixed a couple different shades of paint with some baking soda, and it was really clumpy, so I added some more paint. And it was really runny, so I just added some baking soda a pinch at a time until it was the right consistency I wanted. Then I used the bamboo skewer to just spread this stuff wherever I thought it needed a little something extra. I really like this technique. It gave it a really grimy feel to it. I will definitely be using it again, though I will probably do it before I prime. That way the prime will seal it all in. It was kind of crusting and flaking off as I was handling it, but, it added to the weathered look, I guess. Before my next experiment, I painted all of the little added components to the containers a different color. So like one container was all blue, one was all yellow, one was all green, I think. I wanted them to kind of have a cohesive feel to each container. After I finished adding these painting highlights, I took them outside and I gave them a liberal spray of aerosol hairspray as a chipping medium. I got this idea from CC Minis, a crazy good channel. I love the way he paints, and when he chips the paint, he adds little highlights, and absolutely phenomenal. Crazy good channel. I suggest you check them out. I will put a link in the description. After the hairspray dried, I added a completely different shade of color over the first one. After covering up the first color with a second color, I went over the whole container and I added a khaki color. I would make sure that it was not fully covered, that there were splotches and holes, and that my red crusty stuff showed through. After I used the stolen hairdryer from my wife to dry up the paint, I used Q-tips and an old toothbrush that had been dipped in water and rubbed off some of the paint on top. And then I took paper towel and kind of cleaned up and sopped up the excess paint. The result is a chipped and weathered paint job. I really liked it, though it was a little labor intensive. I have, since filming this, ordered some actual chipping medium. I want to test it out and see if it is better or worse than hairspray. If you know of another method for chipping that I don't know about, please leave a comment below and let me know about it. I would love to try it out. After the chipping was complete and they were all dry, I decided to make a little rusty wash, though the color came out to look a little like coagulated blood. And when used with the khaki background, it made this first one kind of look like raw meat or something. It was not the color I looked for. So I left it on the first one. I just, whatever. But when I worked on the second building, I darkened it up, added more brown, so it didn't look quite so fleshy. Still learning what paints I need, what colors I need to mix together to make specific shades. It's kind of a long learning curve. After I added the brown, it made more of a rusty color, and I liked it a lot better. I used it on the rest of the buildings. The third experiment that I used was something that I discovered when making my temporal eviscerator, the drips. I really liked it. It looked organic, so I just mixed the rusty color with some black and made a really drippy wash and just let the drips ooze down like oil or some sort of weird contamination. So, side note, all the music that you hear in my videos are things that I have mixed together. My youngest two sons told me that they wanted to be in one of my songs, so I recorded them. Wanted to see if I could make anything that even resembled music out of what they did, the sounds and what they were talking about, and it turned out I did, and that's what I'm using as the background right now. If the drips didn't go down far enough, I just reapplied some of it to the same drip, and it just followed it down. And the more I added to it, the further that drip went, and I just let it just drip down wherever it felt like it wanted to go. It made it look real, like organic. After the black oozy drips, I took some pea green shade of paint and made a wash, and then painted it on the bottom sections, and then just some highlights. I just wanted some green, goopy looking gross stuff. I didn't want it to cover it all up, so I rubbed some of it off, but I just added it as a highlight along the bottom, and just a few places where some green, oozy, slimy stuff would be growing. An issue I had with the platform is that I was not able to paint up under it or get the wash up under it like I wanted to, so it still just has the gray primer up underneath there. The final thing that I needed to paint was the guardrails, the upright metal pieces, the ladders. I painted them in a gunmetal gray, make it look like they were metal, and I didn't paint them all, so some of the grime was still showing through with a little bit of the metal, made it look like it was, like messed up and been weather beaten and stuff. And then I was done. I definitely enjoyed this build, and though the colors are a little too vibrant, I definitely liked how it turned out. It's almost a cyberpunk, grungy, post-apocalyptic feel, and I really, really liked it. I like the way it turns out. I was kind of impressed with my own handiwork here. If you like anything at all about this video, from the build to my awful commentary to the gross music that I make, anything at all, please like, subscribe, and share. For those of you that have already subscribed, I'm very, truly humbled. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to get even this far with this channel at all, so thank y'all so much. Overlord, if you're out there listening to this, please pass word along to the Emperor. I'm trying to make these videos to show you that I am rehabilitated and ready to enter back into service of the Galactic Empire. Whenever you're ready. I've spent like 40-something years in this little rock out in the middle of nowhere, and the primates that live on this planet are completely ridiculous. I mean, they're watching this trash right now. I just can't even believe it. So please, just try to get me off of this planet.